or Kim Jong-un actually is a dictator and he's suppressing human rights. Well, is it my fault really? Because if that's justice according to the proposition, then if the government makes one mistake, then they should punish all the citizens. No, thank you. And they actually have no relation with the crime. The fundamental idea of sports is that you're actually judged on true skills. You are actually joining the sport with sacrifices. You're sacrificing actually your academic career, because when you take on sport, you cannot actually do anything else if you take it from a young age. So you ruin these people's life from the first place. You actually sacrifice your childhood, so you take their childhood too, and spend hours of training. If you can return that all this stuff back to the athletes, then we're glad to accept your proposal. But if you suggest that they go in vain, well, we believe that it's a bit and slightly unfair and unjust. And more of it, it's ineffective, as we've proved over and over again. And many of these athletes are actually trying to escape from the ghettos, from places where the police actually suppresses them. For example, Mustafa Baten, who is actually one of the championships in the long distance running, whom I remember because he had a very touching story, for which I read in an article in the magazine. And all these people are actually have one same thing. They actually tried and took it to sports. And the sportsmanship is about being judged on your true skills. And with the proposal of the proposition, it's neither effective nor does it judge you on your skills. And for something to be effective, and for something to be justified, it needs to be effective and moral. It's not effective since the government of the country did not actually change a thing, and it's not moral, and it's not moral because you don't actually help these people reach what we call democracy and what we call freedom and what we call human rights. So we'd like to thank Team Proposition for handing us this model, but we would like to tell them that it's actually not justified because it's neither moral nor effective. And today, after rebutting the point brought up by Team Proposition, I have to talk to you about how it's unfair for that. Thank you.
We'd like to thank the second speaker of the opposition for this speech. We now call upon the stand to close the debate for the side of the proposition.
Social life, the things that create bonds between people, tie people between states and nations, should have absolutely no actual political relevance. They should not have to do with, people dying. They should not have to do with human rights because, now it's fun time. Now it's time to watch soccer. Now it's time to watch, cheerleaders. No. And they said the main justification was this is because we need to keep sports separate from human rights issues, which is the debate. And we're here to propose that they should not be separate in any aspect, especially in such a large aspect which affects all of society. This side of the House would definitely not let states commit gross violations of human rights, participate in major sporting events, or host them. Because human rights are always a priority. And we told you why this is principally wrong, and how this is much more effective in creating an incentive to move towards human rights, and how it sends a great message to the international community that we actually take them seriously at all times. And I'm going to be breaking down this debate into the two main areas which we motioned last, so thank you, which was the justification, where is it pretty much okay to make humanitarian issues part of sports? And secondly, is it effective in bringing about change? Will it make in any kind of way, which is the second part. Now, onto the justification. Is it okay to make humanitarian issues, things which aren't specifically about sports, part of sports, and in fact an integral part of sports, since you might not be allowed to participate because of problems in your country? And they said, well, no, because politics aren't a part of sports, and that kind of circular logic, which is what we're trying to change. And we said, no, they should be, because human rights do remain an issue. They're never, a second place to things like entertainment or meritocracy, even, which sounds nice, but definitely is not important. As your physical integrity, your right to be, tried in court if you've been accused of something, your right not to be tortured unjustifiably, your right to save your own life, all these sorts of things, to express yourself. No, thank you. We think those things are always a major importance, no matter what, and they're more important than meritocracy. And they came up in here and their main moral justification of why we shouldn't do this is because, sports are about judging people only on their skills and not about where they come from, not about their background, and that's a nice concept. Tell that to the people in genocide who are going to get killed because of their background. No, it doesn't even matter where you're from, if you're going to be tortured and killed in your country, if your right to express yourself is silenced, if you're being censored and you can't even talk about this internationally, which makes it even harder to become an issue. We think these things are always an issue. Things like meritocracy and nice much have a basis, the fundamental human rights. You can move on to things like meritocracy, no thank you, and so forth. And also we think it's a bit more complicated than that when you come from states which criminalize certain types of people, usually unjustifiably. And we think that especially comparing this to values in sports, things like cooperation, which we brought up, things like respect, things like equality, things which these countries do not respect. What about those values in sports? Those are just as important as meritocracy, and they're important because promoting those specific values could create a change in these countries. Okay.
Actually, you talk about justice and fairness and how they're equally important as meritocracy. Apart from that, I didn't know why you would mention that, because actually the athletes haven't violated anything of that. The rulers have done it. Don't you agree?
That's true, and that's why, it's hard with these kind of things, because, a lot of athletes won't get the amazing future they hoped in this one tournament that their country can't host. But apart from that, we think that even this might be unpleasant. What's much more unpleasant is the violation of human rights. Indeed, there is a slight opportunity cost for the 12 or 50 or maybe 100 people in the national team that still are not a million, and this is a short-term thing. These are long-term problems, much more important. In any case, it might be unfair, that's true. We think crime is unfair. We think, violations of human rights are more unfair. So thank you. So, when you aren't upholding these rights, you don't deserve to play in sports. You aren't respecting the values which are core in these events. You don't respect to be a core in these events, not participating, not hosting, and you don't deserve the benefits. It's just unfair. And then, and then the other thing is that, they told us that what I just said about the athletes, about how their future is important, is still not as important as the future of the entire nation. And frankly, it's, if they're going to continue harming people's lives, it's about time we did something. It's about time we made, politics and human rights a part of sports. Sports, that everyone across society watches, so these things can get not to just people who debate, not to just people who read The Economist and aware about diplomacy, but to everyone. That's what these kind of things should also be about, and we think is justified. Now, moving on to why is this more effective than embargoes and things no one really knows about, and NGOs that are kind of quite small and don't really have a lot of money. Why is this a major influence on these kind of things? Now, the main reason for this is that, firstly, domestically, we're robbing them with a large amount of income. China made a lot of money through the Olympics, and what? We think that's quite an incentive, because even if they don't care about the people, as you said, they care about money. That's the main thing, keeps them in power. And so we're robbing them with this huge boost of tourism, of industry, of advertising, all those things you mentioned. And the second thing, which I think is more important, and that's what we stress more, is the international pressure you're putting on them. You indeed consider that this pressure is very effective. Harms the relations, harms your alliances, harms your trade connections, smaller income for your country. No, thank you. But you said we should go about this in a different way. We should have international pressure by letting them host these events. The ones that are capable of it, and when people are starving or being tortured, we should let them host these events and then unmask all the atrocities which take place. You think this is just a bit absurd because, China, there was a small issue about how, the things they were building, relied greatly on child labor. No, thank you. I still see no change in China's policies except the massive income which they had from the Olympics. I don't think that there was actually no change in human rights. Still a violation of human rights. We don't see, how they made any actual change. What we did was learn slightly about it. But what we want them to learn from it. We want to teach them. They don't have the right to have these kinds of benefits if they don't upholding human rights. That's the kind of change of the the mentality of that state which we would like to cause, and the international pressure we would like to put on them. And that international pressure has many benefits which we didn't respond to, but how the deterrence in general is taking a much harder stance when it comes to human rights and national safety and security of people within these nations. We think that's much more important. And we also should prove to you how it's very effective. Because, as we said, you're going to lose income, you're going to lose your trade connections in the long run. People who are much to be associated with you as a state, and that does harm you. It harms you so much more. It harms, your reputation worldwide. It harms your, the way you appear as an image of government to the citizens within your own country. And we think that is much more forceful than letting the Olympics happen. Maybe sometime in the long run, some Western country might send an NGO because they might have discovered some of the human rights which are greatly masked if they wanted to. It's quite easy for an authoritarian state to mask the problems in the international community. But if we know about them, we should do something effective, do something now because it's justified. And as we said, because human rights are always a priority, especially international sporting events, we'd beg to oppose today's motion here today.
We'd like to thank the third speaker of the proposition for his speech. We now call upon the third speaker of the opposition to close the
Ladies and gentlemen, today we've seen a proposition that seems to have a quite Western view of the impact of sports and the importance of sports generally in these societies. We see that in fact these societies do not believe that sports is so important, and today I shall prove to you why the case is not there. And because we believe that sports don't have any political boundaries, we are here opposing this motion. And firstly, my first part came up here and talked to you about meritocracy in sports, and secondly, analysed the ineffectiveness of this measure, and then secondly, the second speaker talked to you about how it's actually unfair for the athletes and the injustice of this measure. And today, this debate has mainly boiled down to two main questions. Firstly, whether this measure is morally acceptable in the first place, and secondly, whether this measure does benefit the countries themselves and have any impact in the first place on whether there will be any pressure. So, moving on to the first point about whether this measure is morally acceptable. So, they came up here and had this whole argument about how the violation equals disrespect, which we do agree. And then they talked to us about the sport, about the principle of sport, about communication and all that. And they proved to us very clearly, actually, how this disrespect and this sports principle, no thank you, does actually contradict themselves. However, they made no explanation why this contradiction between sports and violations does really matter. They did not explain why this contradiction harms sports in the first place, and in any way why this contradiction harms sports, and why these specific athletes should be treated in such a discriminatory manner, since there is no real impact on sports, and it's practically more theoretical than practical. And from the moment that we shouldn't really care about such an issue, no thank you, we should not really care about such an issue, since sports, they can't happen as they do, and there is no impact, as I will be later. No thank you. And then also on the moral issue, the main point was that they're going to be around, they care about more about the 12,000 people instead of the 12 people, 50 people, 100 people who will be represented in these games. However, we also do care about the 12,000 people. We obviously care about the 12,000 people. But since we can't actually save them, since this proposition, what they're proposing, does not have any real antidote, as I will later on explain to them, we believe that it's better not discriminate against these 12 people, 50, 100 people. Because these 12,000 people cannot be saved by simply telling the nations which don't care, as I will later on be telling you, which don't care. And the reason why they don't care is because since they simply violate, which is clear they don't care about people, and secondly, since they will try to avoid this international pressure and this international exposure. And we heard no response on that part. Thank you. And we heard no response on that part on that point. And then she also, at the end, she had this big rant about how human rights are so important. She started talking about how they're very important in order for society to function. And yes, we obviously accept that human rights are important. However, we do not see the connection between the human rights themselves and the sports, since by imposing this measure, since by imposing the measure, there can be no real change on the attitudes that these governments will have against human rights, and violations will continue to occur. Thank you. Now, moving on to my second question, but whether this measure will benefit the countries themselves. And so they came up here and they talked to us, and they talked extensively about how these states are going to be pressured domestically, and because they will not be allowed to participate. It seems that we cannot disagree anymore. We see that this is a very unrealistic stance to how the people in these countries do actually treat sports in the first place. And we believe that from the moment that first the human rights are violated, and from the moment that they do live in the fear of this violation, or the fear of being in prison, or the fear of being tortured, or the fear of simply being silenced, we believe that most of the time they will not be going against the government and saying that yes, we want to pressure you, because it is a very minor point. We say that maybe they will be able to take the risk, they will be willing to take the risk of imprisonment, and this violation, however, will obviously not be for any sports. We say there might be for any other manifestation of political figure, however, these people simply do not care that much about sport and will not be truly impacted on domestic. And then, now the second point on this, about the practical aspect, was the international pressure and the trade and diplomacy, which will be affected since they will be sort of legitimized. Firstly, we say that the main determinant of trade and diplomacy, whether we like it or not, are economic benefits and interests. And they refuse to agree to this fact because the moment, and we see that clearly with the USA, who simply have decided to trade with anyone and everyone, except of course North Korea and Cuba. However, they still go to Uganda, they still go to Rwanda, because they do not care about what the human rights are, and therefore we see that there will be no true impact on diplomacy, there will not be any true impact on trade, and therefore, yes. And then they didn't specifically explain how not participating in these events will stop the promotion of trade. And however, even if they did do so, we say that they're such small countries, they will not truly make a huge difference on the event, and therefore there will not be such a great exposure, and there will not be so much, and therefore we will not have such the internationals that they would like to have had in order for them to succeed in their plan. And finally, we saw in the last speech how they actually talk about money. They talk about the money they talk about the money from tourism that they might gain, the money from the Olympics that they might gain. However, we say that firstly, we see that we don't care, that most of these leaders and the dictators in most cases, they don't really care, because as we see, that they don't care about the nations, and they don't care about the people and the economic benefit that can be gained from them. Since whether we like it or not, they do have the money, and they do have the money that they need, and I'm sure they don't care about the impact it can have on people and their own income. And the example they used for that was China, and obviously they use China, because that's the most ideal example that they can find. Is the example which has the most economic growth, the example where the government does in fact care about the people, they care about the economic growth. However, in most cases where such violation does occur, we see that they don't care, and we see that how they said that it didn't really make a difference, and we see that it's still China. We say that the fact that China knows right now that there is child labor is a step forward. It is progress. We believe that yes, NGOs are also aware and some progress can be achieved, and that's better than nothing. And because we believe that sports do not have any political borders, we beg to oppose this motion.
We'd like to thank the third speaker of the opposition for his speech. We now call upon the reply speaker of the opposition to summarize the debate on the opposition.
Robert Mugabe. I'm the president for life in Zimbabwe. I'm a dictator, but I don't say it. And I just learned that from senior positions that my country will not anymore have anything to do with international sport events and about how my citizens will be sad. And I won't make 1 billion euros that I can make from taxes in like 1 second. But you know, I don't care because thank God there's a senior position that will never understand it. I mean, at least they trade with me and they just give me all that developmental aid. But I mean, who cares about that? Yeah, just summarize the debate from the side of T proposition in like 32 seconds. But now getting back to the important thing. I'm right here because my duty is to summarize the debate in 2 main axes around which it has revolved. The first axiom is about whether athletes should pay for their own country's violations concerning human rights. And we definitely are convinced that the answer is no. Because one of the major elements in sports, as we told you, is meritocracy. I mean, athletes win or lose just because of their skill. That's what is supposed to happen. And this is exactly why we believe that athletes, they should not pay for the violations of their countries. Because, I mean, first of all, because they have no actual involvement. If you think about it, they have no involvement concerning their country's political system and oppression. And we have told you time and time again, to summarize the debate, we have told many times in our 3 speeches so far, and we have stressed it, that actually, if you want to talk about true justice, you should put the blame, and we put the credit, where the blame is due. And we would like to remind you that the blame is not due to the athletes who commit this violation just because they're from a country where a dictator who took power in 1979 and is having his 33rd anniversary of being in power, why this particular person is actually violating the rights of the citizens of that country. He's the one that is supposed to pay, and not the athletes themselves. However, that brings me on to the second axiom around which this debate has also revolved. About will this measure be effective in weakening such countries? I mean, will the blame be put where it is due? And will the dictator in the end have any consequence on him? And we might seem a little negative for you guys, but the answer is still no. Because such a measure will not only make no difference at all in such countries. Why? Because when it comes to the fans and the athletes, they don't care at all. I mean, they don't even let them talk freely, or they don't even have, they even put them in jail because they say something different from what they believe. Since they don't even care about what they think, I mean, actually, there could be, this measure could even lead to negative consequences for us because, well, we could let them host an international sporting event, and we could go there, and we could see, for example, the situation, and have international pressure, NGOs, the state, tell them that something has to change, or maybe host this event ourselves, and let them participate. Go to our country, see what democracy is like, go to some beach, have some baths, enjoy generally the time of Greece, and then realize that, you know what? Actually, this is democracy. I prefer this. The way that my dictator governs me is not the best thing in the world, so I'd like this to change. See? Fire just got lit. Then there could be a rebellion in the most extreme case. I mean, the situation in that country could start changing. So, to summarize this reply speech, for all the above reasons, and because sports have no, in our opinion, have no political borders, we, as team opposition, are proud to oppose this particular motion. Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank the reply speaker for his speech. We now call upon the reply speaker for the proposition to finish this debate.